You are listening to the e-flux podcast. Hello, welcome to e-flux podcast. I'm KK Nielsen. I'm one of the editors of e-flux Journal, and I'm here today with Mirene Arsanios, who is a poet, educator, a curator, currently organizing the Friday night readings at the Poetry Project in New York, teaching at Pratt, and who is also a member of a couple of different editorial and research projects. Mm-hmm. Hi, Mirene. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Kay. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So in addition to many other things, Mirene is the author of a text that will appear in this summer's issue of e-flux Journal, which focuses on feminisms. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you could tell us the title of your text to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Just read it?
Yeah.
Or, so, Autobiography di un Idioma. Yeah, which means the autobiography of a language. Autobiography is not translated. Obviously, it remains in English.
And what language is the rest of the title in?
So the rest of the title is in Papiamentu, which is a language, a Creole language that emerges in like the ABC Islands and the Caribbeans, and particularly in Curaçao, which is the island where my grandmother is from. And yeah, so I was just curious about, I guess, I don't know if I should go more into like why the language.
Yeah, why did you, so we were talking together
Mm-hmm.
about the prompt of an issue about feminisms, which of course you've done a ton of work on editorially, writing-wise, etc. And you responded to the prompt with an idea to write from the perspective of a language.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you could talk about that beautiful choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that my reaction to the word feminism, which is, it's always, I feel like it's demanding a lot of someone, to respond to the word. It's kind of a daunting task to talk about feminism because it has such a sort of historical trajectory, and its relevance is sort of constantly being redefined. And I guess it's a word that pertains to the public realm in terms of the kind of debates it invites, and it's constantly sort of mapping different positions. And so I guess it's a word that is always asking of you where do you stand, or what do you actually think of this word, or how are you integrating it. So I guess that I chose the latter approach in terms of how I didn't think of feminism in terms of theory or of a particular movement, but I thought of it in terms of like how does it relate to my relationship to language. Mm-hmm. And again, this is such a huge topic as well, but in particular to my relationship to sort of mother tongues and the languages I write in, and what I've inherited, like why do I write in this language, which is English, but which is informed by a multitude of other languages, which I came to very circumstantially in life, or not. I mean, we can also talk about why this choice is more sort of historical or contextual. But just to answer that, I was just interested in looking at lineages and matrilineal lineages, and what is transmitted via the mother tongue, and what kind of also interruptions exist in that transmission, and what do we reproduce or what do we reinvent basically with language, and inhabiting a female position within that language.
Or multiple female
or multiple,
positions, as it were.
Yeah, multiple female positions. So also like thinking about the sort of stereotypes of like what it means to be a daughter, or what it means to be a mother. Not stereotypes, but like
tropes
or archetypes, or like so what does it mean to think through these positions and also fictionalize them.
So you mentioned the multitude of languages that you write in and speak and know. I'm wondering if you can tell us what those are, and then how you chose Papiamentu for this text that you wrote.
Yeah. So I guess that I have a sort of particular linguistic history I come from a mixed marriage. My father's from Lebanon, my mother's from Venezuela. And I grew up, I had a very sort of itinerant childhood, so grew up in different countries. Went to a French schools. So, Lebanon also is a French mandate. So that's a kind of a language that is spoken in Beirut as well, in a certain probably like class and not that much anymore. I guess I think the English has replaced French. I think I say that French was a colonial language and English is the imperial language. But yeah, so French was there early on, and then went to school in French, and then my mother spoke to me in French, which was a weird choice because she came to that language very late in life, and she spoke to me in a kind of broken French. But for me, that was not broken; it was just like my mother tongue. But around French, there was the Spanish as well, because she would, when she would get mad, or when she would when she needed to tell me like important things or write me letters, it was always in Spanish. So, Spanish for me was this kind of effective language. And also we would go to Venezuela every summer to see my grandmother. And then my father's attempt to speak to me in Arabic sort of died pretty quickly. But I mean, he tried, I think, in my first years of life to speak to me in Arabic. And so...
What did he speak to you in?
In French, so French. And then and so, but I think as a kid, he made it a point to speak to me in Arabic so I could sort of hear the language, or at least be familiar with its sort of sounds and rhythms. And so, but because my mother didn't speak it, she didn't really sort of relate to that language at all. So, so that was this kind of linguistic, I think, like domestic context. And then in the public, in the public, in my everyday life to school, and when going to school. I also lived in Italy, so then that sort of added Italian to the mix. So I guess there are these multiple languages, and then I ended up going to sort of pursuing my education in English. So I went to an American college, and then I went to an English university to do my MA, and it just like English started to be the language in which I started to think, so like read like critical theory was mainly in English. Yeah. So
and how about writing? Do you feel like there was a time when you, like, first of all, was there a time when your thinking switched into English? Like, was it as you were reading theory, and then also with your writing? Like, how did how did those choices or switches start to happen?
Well, I think that English was used like very contextually. So, like, let's say to talk about certain ideas or concepts, or even to talk about our work, like we were, working within contemporary art back. I mean, I was running an art space back then. So that was the lingua franca in a way. English was, or at least contemporary art English was. And so that was this is a kind of terminology that I started writing in with, because I was also producing texts, either like art criticism, press releases, or so that's the language I used, and I composed like sentences in, and I started thinking about like, oh, what is so, and I think that you use it very, it becomes like a default language, and almost it becomes like something that you just read and reproduce very easily. So there's a sort of there's a pool of like archetypal sentences, let's say, that circulate in that specific context. And I think that you just speak them, reproduce them, and they're sort of sprinkled with like critical theory terms. And there's been a lot of writing around that too. But I guess that's how I started writing, and then I started questioning that. I was like, oh, actually, I'm not sure that this is how I want to write. And then I started sort of looking at English differently and like more through literature. And I had studied also English literature in my sort of BA. So I thought like, okay, well, I want to stop writing in that way and start thinking more intentionally about the language I'm using. And that's where like the shift occurred, I guess.
Sure. And then in this case, how did you choose Papiamentu of all of the languages and sort of universes and matrilineal universes from which you specifically come? How did you pick this one? What does it mean?
I think like Papiamentu for me is, I guess that it comes from maybe a place of lack, because I sometimes have a nostalgia for not having had, the mother tongue or the sort of the self-evident kind of very sort of naturalized language that is sort of just not even given, but you sort of grow up in and you don't question. And I guess I had that, but it just was constantly sort of juxtaposed with other languages. So I've always had like, oh, why doesn't my mother speak Spanish with her mother and not Spanish with me? So, it was never sort of, I guess it's like it was never fully sort of naturalized, I guess, in the family context at least. And then I guess, so I wanted that. And then I knew that my grandmother would speak Creole when she didn't want my mother to understand her. And also I was thinking, oh, I want to know where all this sort of transmission or withholding of languages but languages is just like a stand-in for so many other things like affect and love and all of that. Where did it start and how did my grandmother grow up in that language and why did she decide not to use it and why did my mother decide not to speak her mother tongue with me? So I just wanted to investigate that. And I guess Creole, I think that I'm naturally drawn to the composition of Creole as a language composed of many others. And I guess that, I myself speak a kind of Creole, I guess, that is not, it's not an official language, but, it's like I use like a syntax from that language and maybe I mistranslate a word in this other language. So, it's a formation that I feel instinctively sort of drawn to.
Sure.
And that can accommodate a kind of multiplicity that the mother tongue doesn't necessarily allow for. Because as I was writing the text, I was also reading about the mother tongue as also this kind of relatively like modern invention in which it came about, I think, or it was naturalized, let's say, in the 19th century or like with the nation state and with certain ideas of official languages and how the mother was the vehicle for that transmission she became the means of transmitting ideas also of nationhood through language. And so it I was interested in questioning that too. Like,
for sure. And it's interesting you mentioned that also just because I'm trying to think of how different nation states and like identities work in terms of patrilineal or matrilineal. I think from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's in Lebanon, for example, I think Amal was saying that nationality is transferred by the father, which is like interesting in juxtaposition with what you just said about language going through the mother.
Right, yeah. No, that's true. In Lebanon, definitely, a woman cannot pass down her nationality to her children, although she's the one who traditionally sort of educates them. There's still this kind of very conventional division between like women being sort of confined to the private realm and men to the public as a more sort of participating in public life. Yeah, but I still think that language, even though like maybe the mother cannot transmit the nationality in that way, there's still like a mapping onto like I mean Lebanon is a complicated case, but I guess that what I want to say is that sometimes the transmission of the mother tongue, when it's mapped onto a more sort of national narrative, doesn't allow for other languages to come in. So usually nation states want to be represented by a single language. And so it doesn't sort of accommodate for, the multiplicity of a land or a territory or, or histories, inhabiting a place. Yeah. So, and this is why like minorities within even the national territory, like I'm thinking of Spain, for example, have difficulties in having a language officialized or recognized, which is not, like the one sort of national language. Official, exactly.
language.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I'm curious what, as you were researching this and the sort of codification of mother tongues and nation states, which countries you were looking into.
Yeah. Well, I also grew up in Italy, and Italy was a very sort of fragmented territory up until its unification at the end of the 19th century, and each region had its own dialect, and sort of the national television was the one of its main roles or functions was to actually disseminate a standard Italian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Through television.
Through television, yeah. To like, anchor people, and they just, I guess that, but also, United States, like I'm sure there's like a lot of indigenous languages or anywhere in the world, but like any place with a colonial history, basically, I think has that issue, encounters that issue at some point.
Yeah, definitely here too, and violently, of course.
Exactly.
With boarding schools and up until people's current lifetimes. It's
Yeah. And the issue with like officializing language, I guess, is a tricky one. Do you want like a state that has denied you to recognize you? Yeah. So I also guess like I wanted to, there's on the one hand the way that mother tongues are instrumentalized for a national narrative, but there's also another kind of transmission that happens that doesn't necessarily sort of fit that national narrative, and so it's not like mother tongue is systematically in service of the nation state. It could be also doing another work of transmission that is linked to a past that is threatened, for example, specifically with communities who are losing their languages, and I guess that the Creole for me is a way I guess that in my matrilineal history, that language has been lost in a way. Like it hasn't been sort of, kept alive or something.
Yeah, what's the situation with Papiamentu currently?
Well, actually, it's a kind of thriving Creole. It's I think like a couple 100,000 people speak it. Like 300,000 people, I think, speak it, which is more than a lot of other Creole languages. So it's like, I think it's the official language. Oh, Dutch is still the official language in Curaçao, but Creole, Papiamentu is recognized. And I don't know if it's being taught in schools quite yet, but up until very recently it wasn't. So maybe now it is. But yeah, there's that,
So to give a sense of the language, how it sounds, and your exploration of all of these issues you've been talking about, I wonder if you could read a little bit of your text.
Okay. Should I read any section, any paragraph?
Any part.
Maybe I could read up to here. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Okay. I am deregulated, a language for which no jurisdiction applies. My past is dirty. All pasts are dirty, though some are filthier than others. I'm of the filthier kind, sorto. I sit in a greasy bank account somewhere in the British Virgin Islands. I live here amid a slew of luxury resorts, spas, and white tourists lathered in sunscreen, trailing iridescence in infinity pools. They smoke cigars, inhale tar, sink marriage proposals with blazing sunsets. They say I look pretty, bonita, in my blue robe, compliment my hair the way I keep it, silky, with imported oils. They ask questions. What do you do, and are you un local? I was born on a nearby island where my mother Elsa was born to her mother Elena, I say. They give me a faint, uninterested smile. To shut me up, they buy me a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. I ask for an extra ice cube, a otro refill, then another otro. It took a while, but I've improved at being myself. I can now speak without fatigue. I know everybody here, aquí. the elderly and the young. The young believe I'm one of them, but generations do not apply to me. I'm centuries old and have been pregnant for the past 20 years. They, the tourists, think I'm delirious, that I've had too much to drink. When they realize I'm telling the truth, they feel betrayed. What are you talking about? Is this even hasta un language? I also want to know, why this language? In my mother's bedroom, an old television playing American movies was left on day and night. At first, I thought I was alone, the private recipient of a dialect in black and white, but I soon realized that everyone was concerned and that this expansion was irreversible. It no longer needed ships, the physical vessel of its early dissemination. English scurried across ocean bottoms, seamlessly meandering continental distances. I never considered this language to be my own. I do not hate it. I do not love it. It is incidental, and life is made of circumstances, outcomes of unruly trajectories. Elsa firmly believed that English would help me find a job in the hotel industry, communicate with tourists, and the world beyond the island. English, she said, always leads to a resolution. It rarely strays from its intentions. It means what it says and is suited for uneven deals in which one of the parties always feels slightly fucked. English has fuck in it, a word that gives me great satisfaction.
Thank you so much for reading. Mm-hmm. And I also, after hearing this, wondered if you could quickly as possible, bring in two other people, writers, into the conversation. One being Jamaica Kincaid, who you have an epigraph to at the beginning of the text, and the other being Iman Mersal, and who you've also done a lot of work with Iman Mersal.
Yeah.
So now we're going to cut to Ana Paula reading a section of a text called The Displaced Voice by Iman Mersal, translated from the Arabic in which it was written by Lisa White. And Ana Paula was part of Belladonna Collective and also commissioned and edited and curated a reading with Iman Mersal.
The accent's energy follows a different tempo proper to the mother tongue, and when the voice carries it into a foreign language, the result is an illusion of an attempt to speak two languages at the same instant, one at the surface and the other concealed, one in motion and the other sidelined, up in arms at its neglect and abandonment. The accent is thus not necessarily a speech defect, but rather the mother tongue's struggle against mortality. It is competing with a foreign language via sabotage of the bond between voice and rhythm. A syllable is amputated here or there, an unfamiliar letter rushes forth when it should have bided its time. A sound leaps onto the head of another and chomps off a part of its allotted space. The sabotage may also come from the generosity of the mother tongue in its dealings with time, adding a few split seconds with its vowels, where the foreign language permits none. Thus, street becomes a street, and close become closes.
I will return to the conversation with Mirene.
Well, yeah, I think they're great two writers that I greatly respect and admire. Jamaica Kincaid, the title is a reference to the Autobiography of my mother, which deals precisely with that interruption and transmission, I think, and what it forecloses in terms of what kind of world we can imagine. And so this story, the narrator in that story is just so, I don't know, fascinating, I would say. I'm still thinking about it, but I think that she has a relationship to motherhood that is kind of monstrous. There's a monstrous aspect, and I feel like when writing this text, I was just exploring also this ambivalence in terms of how much, and also I'm at an age personally where I have to sort of kind of make a decision or sort of clarify my own ideas about motherhood, And I feel that I had my own ambivalences about it, based on my own matrilineal history. And just that book just sits with these ambivalence. And of course, they're plugged in larger historical traumas in the case of Kincaid. But I was just thinking about accepting the ambivalences and the monstrosities of motherhood. And so I was just really drawn by this story because of what it was doing. And so it's beautiful, just like a beautifully written book. And Iman also actually explores these ambivalences. Like we published a text in Marzen called on motherhood and violence, in which she looks at motherhood through a kind of de-romanticizes motherhood and its relationship to reproduction, and how reproduction is actually a very, like, the mechanisms that sort of kick in when, like, sort of, an egg needs to be fertilized or not, or all that sort of natural selection is just like not at all, doesn't map onto these feelings of like sort of selflessness or total acceptance. It's a very sort of cruel process. And Iman does a great job in talking about that, but also the medical industry in Egypt, because she herself had a family trauma. So I think both writers, I guess, dive into that very difficult topic without, and I think what they both do wonderfully well is that they resist like romanticizing it and just sit with that uneasy feeling of transmission and withholding and a complicated love, basically.
Yeah. And just on a biographical note, you were mentioning earlier that Iman's relationship with Arabic and her own children. I was wondering if you could just say that quickly.
Well, I don't know. I mean, she could speak to that better than I do, but I was just noticing, because I always feel like, my Arabic's not good enough, and I just feel like always that I'm there's like I can't perform my identities, in ways that are satisfying to others. And so I was looking at Iman, and then she told me that she speaks with her sons in English. Or maybe she also might speak, I don't know, she might also use Arabic, but I think that English was the main language. And then we were talking, it's like, but she might, but Iman is so deeply rooted in Arabic, and she has found her own point of entry into that language. This is why she's such a great writer. And I was thinking, but even if she speaks English to her sons, she might as well be speaking Arabic, because I feel that sometimes, the spirit or the kind of the thoughts that a language can carry, even if it's not used technically, I mean, still, all these things are still there. So she might be speaking in Arabic English while speaking in Arabic. So I just want to hold on to that possibility of a language not being the thing that it is. It could be something more like immaterial as well. Yeah.
With that beautiful thought and image, we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, Mirene, for being here and for the conversation.
And thank you. Thank you for having me.